KTRS. The other story that's getting some national news is this tweet that was tweeted out by a woman who supposedly is a friend of a grand jury member, in which she said in the tweet, I have a friend who sits on the grand jury, and she tells me that they don't have enough evidence to indict the police officer. That tweet was quickly taken down. It went viral. Washington Post is talking about it, and Bob McCullough's office has said they are looking into it. Jane Duker, what are your thoughts as you watch that?
Well, I mean, I think it's very disturbing and sad because I probably think the likelihood that this person actually does have a friend on the grand jury and that this grand juror would be talking, I think is so slim.
Really?
Yeah, because I think everyone knows. These are not sequestered jurors. And I think everyone knows the stakes and that the world is watching and that they've seen how all of, misinformation, real information, everything has gone viral. I think, so I'm glad that they're taking it seriously, and they absolutely should. And if there's even a hint of it, they need to determine, what that means. And so, there's a judge.
What does it mean? If it turns out to be any factual, if it's true that this grand juror was talking?
Well, that's probably juror misconduct, and that person will go. So, and since you only have to have like 10 of the 12 or 9 of the 12, I think, in order to, to take action,
right,
that person could go. So then what has to be investigated by the judge and the prosecutor is whether this conduct somehow had an effect on the remaining jurors. Did the remaining jurors know about it? I mean, you have to prove that it actually would affect the process that's in place. Talking to outside people doesn't necessarily taint the rest of the grand jurors. So I think they would have to investigate that like they would in any other jury trial.
Are there alternate grand jury members?
There usually is, but the key is, do you want to? I mean, because this group has heard all of the evidence up to now,
right?
And do you want to, really redo it when it would, slow the process down? If it's not affected the rest of the jurors, is there really a good reason to slow this down? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it depends the effect on the other jurors.
Well, and I think this also brings up to the technology to now in the modern days of jury members. And again, as Jane pointed out, these grand jury are only meeting once a week. So it's I think it's much tougher. It's tougher on the whole process for people to realize that they cannot be on social media,
right,
and including their friends.
Well, yeah, it goes to show you that there's actually gatekeepers aren't all bad, and that if they didn't have Twitter, this wouldn't get in a newspaper.
You might not find out about it. I mean, so I guess in that way it is better. But and I think they are taking it seriously. I mean, nobody wants this to taint the process. I mean, people are already skittish enough, and so
it seems like the people who are still shutting down Beautytown and still shutting down the pizza places are still demanding that Bob McCullough go away, resign, give up the whatever else. Not that he's going to do that, and not that we should give in to these terrorist attacks or anything, but if he were to, would the whole thing start over again?
You mean that's a good question, because I'm not sure if I'm trying to think of a case where you switched prosecutors in the middle of presentation of evidence.
But he's not in the room prosecuting
That's what makes it strange. I mean, so when you say special prosecutor, does that mean that the two women who are presenting the case,
one of them who's African American,
right, would have to go?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm not sure that any of that has been thought through. And so, if I guess it's feasible. That I guess you could try to get another prosecutor up to speed and start over, but it would delay it significantly.
Well, as Jane's right, I don't think there has been that we know of a situation that's occurred like this, but there is a legal process. I mean, you can't just throw in a special prosecutor at your own whim,
right?
Because then when do you stop?
Policies, and there is law that dictates how you do this.
Right.
All right. Another piece of information that came out this week is that our governor, Jay Nixon, decided to fly to Afghanistan to check out global terrorism and hold a news conference with reporters, saying that global terrorism is the new normal, while Ferguson continues to fester, while his state continues to be mentioned on the floor of the UN. Was that a bad PR move, Stacey Newman?
Well, I don't believe so. I think it was long scheduled with other governors from around the country. I mean, I think it's important for elected officials, including our own governor, to be aware of what's happening in terms of national policy. I do work with a legislative group dealing with national security, and I think that's vital for governors to understand and to be there. And in terms of Ferguson, there's no way, I don't believe, that the governor, with so many other things happening in the state, can be physically in Ferguson every single day. And it's, these are situations
But the
monitored.
criticism of Governor Nixon from many African Americans and some in this new coalition was that he hasn't gone and visited West Florissant.
Well, I think that you could look at the governor's schedule. I would beg to differ. It's a huge state. We've got a lot of things going on besides protesters in Ferguson.
Yes, but you know what? What's going on in Joplin, Missouri wasn't mentioned on the floor of the UN.
Well, as you pointed out earlier, Ferguson now has become even a worldwide topic. I mean, many people are talking about it, with the advent of, social media, and we've got, national reporters who have kind of embedded themselves here. I mean, it's become a national symbol for racial minorities and.
But the criticism of him was he acted late, he acted slow. And then when he was engaged, he really wasn't engaged.
Well, I think that you're talking about two different things. You're talking about the governor going to Afghanistan.
No. And then let me fly to Afghanistan while Ferguson is festering.
Well, I mean, how long do you want the governor to be
as long as it
stuck
takes.
in the state.
As long as it takes.
But believe me,
as long as we're stuck being held hostage by all this.
Well, I believe that the governor is monitoring this. I have full faith. I have full faith that the right elected officials, and it's not just the governor. There's a lot of people that are involved that should be in terms of local elected officials.
Jane, bad move, right?
Well, I mean, I think what people are frustrated about with Governor Nixon and whether you agree with his response to what he did in Ferguson quickly and enough. I mean, that needs to stand sort of on its own. The idea that he went to Afghanistan, to me, I mean, look, they're not, no matter what Jay Nixon does right now, there's going to be a certain amount of population that are just going to say everything he's doing is wrong. If he had handled Ferguson fine, then nobody would be complaining about Afghanistan. I think the real issue is they feel that he has not been present enough during the crisis. And so do I think Afghanistan adds or takes away from that? No. I think the issue of whether he responded properly, to that circumstance, unfortunately, I think that time has passed. I mean, I think people have formed opinions about whether his response was appropriate or not that isn't going to change whether he went to Afghanistan or not. So put it this way, if he didn't go to Afghanistan, I don't think people's opinions of his response to Ferguson would have changed.
It looks like, from where I'm sitting, the Democratic Party is in total and complete disarray. You have open criticism of a Democratic governor from Democrats, city, county, white, black. You have the Black North Coalition now coming out in favor of a very conservative Republican against the Democratic Steve Stenger. It looks like the party is completely falling apart.
Well, what's funny about that is that the people that are making those claims are the Republicans, and that's sort of like what that is akin to is the arsonist calling the fire department. I mean, it's kind of, so we have all these Republican policies that are, devastating our communities, our education system, our urban areas, all the areas we've talked about, healthcare, guns. They want to do everything to eviscerate these areas and then scream and yell that the Democrats, who can't fight these policies are somehow the problem. I mean, it's like you start the fire and then you call the fire department and say there's a big problem here. I mean, that's the frustration that you feel is that, they pretend that these policies that they've been this right-wing agenda that we've been living under for the last decade somehow isn't going to have any effect. And so the leader...
Well, wait a minute. Jay Nixon's been governor for 8 years.
Right.
Charlie Dooley's been county executive for 10 years. There's a lot of Democrats running around. President Obama's been president for 6 years.
Absolutely. But Jay Nixon has been overridden on all of his vetoes by a dominated, Republican legislature. And so, he tried to stop the guns. He tried, is trying to keep community schools. He's trying to prevent women from being, abused by this legislature. He tried to get Medicaid expansion, and this legislature won't do it. So, and then Charlie Dooley, he can't, I've been more than critical of Charlie Dooley, but some of these issues are on a statewide basis that we're going to, need to change. So that they're not blameless.
Stacey Newman, looks like your party's falling apart.
Well, I don't believe so. I mean, that you remember that phrase, party of the big tent. We have a lot of constituencies the Democratic Party represents, and I've been very involved in gender issues from beginning of time for myself. And it goes back to you can either complain about it or you can get in there and actually work to correct the policies that actually help people. I chose to get in there and actually work to correct the policies that, again, as Jane pointed out, that the majority of St. Louis County voters actually want. We do not want extreme Todd Aiken Republican agenda that actually hurts people.
All right, that's Stacey Newman and Jane Duker. We should mention John Deal was a late scratch this morning, and so late we're going without John Deal or somebody on the right side of these issues who can set you two ladies correctly.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're by yourself.
9:36, the board meeting continues on the Big 550 KTRS.